Okay, it's March 24th. It's about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm about to call a shelter house, an abuse house, out in Nova Scotia called the Bryony House. Apparently they offer services for abuse victims. So let's find out what they've got, what services they've got for the other half of the abused population. Bear with me while I dial their number.
Can I help you?
Hi, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, thank you.
I was wondering what services you offer for male victims of domestic violence?
We are exclusively for women, sir. For men, there really aren't any services, community services. You would have to perhaps go to your own family physician and maybe get a referral to a private therapist for support in that respect.
Oh, but there's no safe houses?
Not for domestic violence. There are a couple of shelters for men in the city, but it's more around homelessness. It's not, supportive services for people who are experiencing domestic violence. There's a place called Turning Point. It's on Barrington Street in Halifax.
I see. But considering that there are male victims of domestic violence?
Well, I agree, sir. I'm not disputing that claim at all. It's just that there are no designated shelters for men who are experiencing domestic violence. Unfortunately, that's the system right now, because it's primarily women who experience it, and it doesn't mean that men don't experience it at the same level and experience the same after effects of it, but there aren't any shelters for men experiencing domestic violence. But there are shelters for men who are experiencing homelessness.
What are men and their children supposed to do who are fleeing domestic violence then? And I'd really like to make you aware of the fact that the last General Social Survey put the rates at 585,000 men suffered domestic violence, domestic abuse at the hands of their spouses, and 601,000 women suffered domestic abuse at the hands of their spouses. Now, that 1% difference has remained constant for the last 20 years.
Well, I'm not going to dispute that, sir. This is more at a government level because we are funded by the government, and of course, people would have to band together and, elicit the support of the government for those things. What I would suggest, I don't know what your financial situation is right now, but if you are or are currently receiving income assistance or are a candidate for receiving income assistance, you could speak to a worker through the Department of Community Services.
Wouldn't it be better to solve the whole domestic violence problem instead of just half of it?
I agree. That's a blight on society, unfortunately, and you're right, it should be addressed.
And considering that the rates are so similar and have been so similar for the last 20 years or so of StatsCan's research on it, really, what are we doing here? Underserving, unfortunately. I'm not entirely familiar with the stats that you're quoting me right now. Well, there's statistics in Canada, last General Social Survey. You can look them up online. If you want, I can send you the information.
No, that's okay. Just what were the numbers again that you...
585,000 men, which is about 6% of the population, and 601,000 women, which is about 6.4% of the population.
Wow.
And when I told police about when police responded to a domestic violence call that I was involved in after being assaulted and the female admitting to the assault, they took her to an abused women's shelter.
Oh, well, I'm not aware of that. They didn't press charges against her?
Oh, no. Despite the zero tolerance policy against domestic violence.
Well, that would be something perhaps you could take up with the police. you could call the police station and launch an inquiry into why that happened. If you were assaulted by somebody and you...
Oh, it's in the police report, and, fully admitted, fully allocated to, and also the fact that there was no threats made, and neither did I, initiate the physical violence or retaliate on the physical violence.
But
yes,
if they had information enough to substantiate charges, then that person should have been charged.
Oh, absolutely. But why aren't the police upholding their oath to the Constitution of Canada, in which you'll find Section 15, equality under the law, and Section 28, no discrimination between the sexes, and Section 52, which states that that is the highest law in the land.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I would encourage you to take this up with the police, maybe get a hold of the responding officer sergeant, and make an inquiry into why there was a lack of action on their part when you were assaulted and your partner was taken to a shelter rather than charged.
Yeah, I already did that, and the police kind of went silent and buried it underneath and did not want to answer that. I'm just going to inform you who I am, ma'am. My name is Dan Perrins. I am the news director for Voice for Men Canada. Okay?
Sorry, could you repeat your name again, Dan?
Perrins, P-E-R-R-I-N-S, and I am the news director for Canada at avoiceformen.com. I understand that your organization, and I'm not going to say you, ma'am, because you've been extremely reasonable, but I understand your organization is does not like being exposed for bigotry and sexism on the basis, and that would be ignoring half the abused population. We are international, but we find this to be extremely deplorable and heinous, okay? And it ends up causing men to kill themselves when they are falsely accused and when they lose touch with their children. And that number about male suicides, ma'am, we run at about 76%. Men make up 76% of that suicide population. And despite the Government of Canada knowing this fact, on the Canadian Mental Health Association's website, there are 11 papers for women's mental health and 1 for men. Okay, so we have an issue going on, and men's human rights are exposing these issues, and we are getting grief from feminist organizations in the shelter and abuse industry complex, and those who capitulate to their claims and allegations, and they are only claims and allegations, and a bunch of fraudulent information has been put out by those organizations. I'm not saying you specifically, ma'am, but feminist organizations across Canada.
Well, I can't speak to that.
Like I said, ma'am.
I know. No, I hear you. I hear your frustration and I hear your angst around the situation. But I can assure you that our agency does not diminish the abuse that men experience at the hands of their female partners. But our agency, we support women who are fleeing domestic abuse. But that doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge or know that that happens for men as well. Yeah.
Then should your organization, if they are truly interested in ending the domestic abuse problem, have literature or websites where men can go to and information that they can absorb and make choices from regarding female-on-male domestic violence? How about lesbian domestic violence? You people, is your organization aware that that runs at a higher rate than heterosexual domestic violence? And there is no patriarchal figure there. So much for patriarchal theory and patriarchal privilege being the underlying factor of domestic violence, isn't it?
Well, we certainly support women at Bryan House who are in same-sex relationships, and we are aware of the statistics. Our goal in supporting women is to move them and their children forward in a positive direction, to give them the support that they need to recover and heal from the experiences that they've had and to move forward in their lives. But we are very aware of the statistics. We're very aware of the shortcomings in the systems and the lack of government attention to these situations. And I in no way minimize
Ma'am, like I've said, I would like to reiterate it. You have been extremely civil and understanding, and no disrespect, no beef with you at all, ma'am. What about the children of women fleeing domestic violence? Is there a cutoff point for the age of a male child and whether or not they're able to receive safety?
At our facility, it is 18, but we don't just exclude them from being supported. We try to find alternative spots in the community for them to be supported, or sometimes family will step in and help out with that particular individual.
And what about trans women who are fleeing domestic violence?
Yes, we support transgendered individuals here.
Okay, ma'am. All right. Well, I thank you for your time.
Dan, I'm sorry. You said you're the Nova Scotia director for...
No. I am the Canadian news director for A Voice. Yes. Canadian news director for AVoiceForMen.com.
For AVoiceForMen.com. Okay.
Yes, I understand that you're not too happy with our posters. We're not too happy with the fact that half the abused population are being ignored and slandered and vilified and demonized by posters that lay the blame for domestic violence at one gender or sex's feet.
Well, we certainly don't lay the blame to anybody except the individuals who are involved.
Your posters do.
We realize that's a two-sided coin. We absolutely realize that.
That perhaps posters saying that domestic violence is not a gendered issue might be in order? And ma'am, again, this is something that, not against you, but perhaps needs to go up higher up in the organization.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your input, Dan. It was interesting to talk with you.
Well, ma'am, we're tired. Men are tired of being lied about via feminist theory.
I hear you.
We are non-feminists or feminism, but very pro-women's rights. Okay, we do not believe that feminism and women's rights are the same. Okay? Okay. All right.
Thank you for your time and calling, Dan. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
There you have it. Phone call done.